Hello and welcome to Week 9 here in Introduction to Psychology, and we're entering into, well, I like them all, but developmental psych is really cool. So we're looking at lifespan development here, Chapter 9. I teach a whole class. I put a survey out there for you folks, and it looks like I'm going to be offering developmental psych next semester for any of you that might be interested in taking that class. I'll be offering that as a dual enrollment class. So that's the plan. We'll get right into all of this. That's a great class. Now, in this particular chapter, I'm introducing you to, a single chapter that covers actually a field that is multidimensional, multidisciplinary. It encompasses psychology and goes beyond psychology, so it's big. First, in the discussion, we're talking about the developmental clocks. You know about one of them, the biological clock. Ticks how we age. We have the psychological clock, psychological maturity, and the maturation of particular skills, or the wave of particular skills like memory. It gets better, then it gets worse, and then you have, any personality changes that are predictable over time. Then we have the social clock. Now, the social clock is not our ability to engage in social interactions. It is the social, whoa, tripped right over that. It is, I was trying to say social and society at the same time. Society's expectations as to what we should be able to do and what we should be doing at any particular age. So the whole failure to launch kind of thing would be a violation of the social clock. Now, every family, just like every family has its own culture, so every family has its sort of timeline as to when things are supposed to happen. You yourself have your timeline as to when you expect to achieve particular aspects of your life. So it's focusing on that. The historical clock is a clock that defines who you are based on when in history you were born. And that relates to another part of our work this week. Now, one of the fun ways of doing a comparison of historical clock is to kind of talk about technological changes that have happened over the years. When I was young, there were, we played music on vinyl records. That's all that was available. That and 8-tracks were available. So vinyl records, which are making a comeback right now, were the way that we got music. And we had a turntable, you had huge speakers, and all of that stuff was our stereo. And certainly that has changed since that time. So you can see the historical clock places me in a point in history, gives me a different perspective. That relates to the quiz, where you look at your birth year, and then based on the information in the course book, you identify which generation you are. So these are millennials, Generation Y, Gen X, the baby boomers, the silent generation, the great generation, all of these throughout history, these labels that we put on people because they were born during a certain period of time. They experienced certain historical events, and those shaped who they are. So the kind of in general, in just very, very wide brushstrokes, you can talk about these populations as being unique from each other. I'm right on the cusp of baby boomer and Gen X. I'm much more Gen X than I am baby boomer, but I got some baby boomer stuff in me. So you don't have to fit in any one of those. But this particular class, because of the way it's being taught to high school, you're all probably going to be really much about the same age. When I'm teaching this at KV, there's usually quite a diversity in the class. We'll have individuals that are still in high school, ranging all the way up to grandparents who are getting their degree after retirement. So you see that difference of personality across. Maybe consider talking to some of your teachers about when they were born, looking at that generation, comparing it to your generation, and just seeing how your worlds were different. Lots of things are the same, but just to respect each other's different world view. There's not one better than the other. They're different. And sometimes when we don't understand where someone's coming from, it's because we can't relate to the generation in which they grew up, the norms that were the norms back then. So it's kind of an interesting, great discussion to have in your classes. Raise your hand and have that happen. Now, that's discussion A was talking about the developmental clocks. Quiz chapter 9 is talking about generations. Discussion B is focusing on one particular theory, and that is Erik Erikson's psychosocial stages of identity development. Each one of those stages is exemplified in a conflict, like trust versus mistrust, or intimacy versus isolation, and you look through those, and most of you are probably going to you'll be able to come up with examples of events in your life, share events in your life that relate to any one of those stages. Maybe when you're 2-3 years old, you got into things a lot. You were very industry. And was that supported or not? By your environment. That's why it's called the psychosocial stage theory. It's the psyche's emerging, exploring the world, and the social world is reacting to it. Does it support the natural development, or does it suppress natural development? And that's what we end up with in terms of as we're making our journey through the social world. Okay. So that's chapter 9. The other thing that's coming up, in fact, I think it's due next week, but I'm going to have to be flexible about this. I don't know where you folks are in terms of your personal change plan. I haven't really heard from anybody about your own personal behavior management plan that you were supposed to start. I talked about it when we talked about learning, and it was using the ABC contingency theory to develop a personal change behavior plan. If this is all new to you and you're like, what is that? Look in the back of the course book and you'll find a description of that assignment. That assignment means you have to put together a behavior plan following the instructions in that assignment and using the material from the chapter on learning, and then run it for a while. You have to run the behavior plan for a while to see if it works. And the more serious you take this, the better the results will be. So that is apparently due next week. I'm going to have some flexibility with that, while at the same time I'm still waiting on some reviews of your information literacy project proposals. So a lot of work to do right now. We're at the halfway point. That was midterm. Now we have the other half of the class, and things may seem like they're piling up. So we have this behavior plan. You got to get that done, and then you have the rest of the semester pretty much to get the information literacy paper done. A lot of you have submitted proposals. Many of you have a 100. Go look at those, see the tips that I've left, if any, and a bunch of you have less than a 100, and you need to go and redo the question based on my feedback and get to the point that you can start researching that question. I know I've been answering some questions on email, so if you're set to go with that. So that's our stuff for this week. Could be looking at lifespan development, and if you, whether you participated in that survey or not, this content, if it grabs a hold of you, this is the kind of content I'm going to be offering next semester in my developmental psych class in this same format. So have a great week, and I'll see you later.